Hello, and welcome to Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We are going to hear stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine, here. If you don't know who I am yet, I am Catherine. I'm an LCSW based in Southern California, and I have been social working since 2009. Currently, I have the Social Workers Rise podcast, which you are currently listening to. I also have a few courses that I've designed specifically for new and entry-level social workers and mental health professionals to increase your confidence and your skills as you enter into the workforce in this career. And additionally, I do have the Rise directory. This is my organization that is connecting pre-licensed therapists to clinical supervisors. So you are never, ever stuck in a place that you feel is not serving you, that you have outgrown, or that you have felt unsafe at. There are always, always options. And that is part of the beauty of this podcast is that we're able to explore so many different options that you have with your degree in social work. Today, I wanted to talk with you about how do we master peace as a social worker. And this comes at a time where I'm asking this of myself. And I've been asking myself this through my entire career, right? So during the holidays, everybody wishes us peace and joy and all this stuff. And that can be really hard to find peace and joy when every day we show up to work and we are talking to yet another person who has experienced some sort of trauma or bad news or really terrible event in their life. Because let's be honest, a lot of times when social workers meet people for the first time, it is quite possibly the worst day of their life. And they probably don't really want to talk to you, but they have to, right? That's a lot of the clients that we work with. Or that some sort of situation has happened, and now you are there representing that shit has gone bad, and that things need to be fixed, and that there's changes that are coming, and uncertainty in the future. And this can be really hard, especially because if you're anything like me, you got into this field of social work to help people. When I started out in my career, in my bachelor's program, in my master's program, I'm thinking this is going to be amazing. I'm getting a degree to learn how to help people on a deeper level, to understand people, to work within these systems, to create change, to be an advocate, to really truly change people's lives. And I'm going to feel like so good knowing that I helped somebody, that I helped somebody feel not so alone today, right? And that was my idea. And on top of that, I'm going to get paid for it, right? I'm going to make a living doing this. And that was my thinking, and I didn't understand the heaviness that can come with that in a lot of the roles that we do as social workers. And to be honest, for this episode, I had all sorts of ideas. Like, what are these ways that social workers need to know to master peace? That's my problem is I overthink everything. And I realize I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about one thing, right? I'm going to give you one thing today because if you do this and if you really kind of take this in, I think it'll make a really, really big difference in your life and how you're able to show up and how you're able to start this journey of mastering peace for yourself as a social worker in this field, even when you do see very, very challenging situations, right? I remember my first like really real intense social work job was my internship in grad school, and I was working in hospice. And I remember going out and visiting all these patients in their different homes, in the houses, in these neighborhoods, and thinking, wow, there's somebody at the end of their life in this home, and right next door there's kids playing, and people just aren't even aware of what's happening. And I found myself thinking about those clients in those homes on my days off. Maybe I would drive by the neighborhood and think like, man, that person is dying. And it would really get me down. And I don't mean to bring you down, but I'm sure you can relate in some sort of way, right? No matter what kind of setting you've been in, I'm sure there's been a time where you have thought about your clients after you go home and think, man, the world is just continuing on while my client is experiencing this life altering, really fucked up event, right? And I'm sorry to cuss, but sometimes there's just no other way to put it. And it can get to you, especially if you're thinking about this all the time. And that was me. And I had to really go through a lot to process this, to be able to separate my emotions from the lives of what's going on with my clients in a healthy way, in a professional way, right? And fortunately, I was able to process this with my colleagues and with my clinical supervisor. And, I'm going to tell you essentially what I have learned to do about this, right? And it's so important that when you are feeling this way, if you feel like you're taking the work home with you, if it just feels heavy, if it feels like a lot on your shoulders, and you keep thinking about your clients even when you're off, and it's causing you anxiety and stress, definitely talk to somebody about that, because this is a normal thing that happens to human beings who see other human beings that are in pain, right? And we need to be able to process this out loud with somebody that we trust, right? If it's a colleague, that's amazing. If it's your clinical supervisor, that is even better. That's awesome. If you need a clinical supervisor, right, reach out to, go to risedirectory.com and see if there's a clinical supervisor in your area. A lot of times there's ways that your company can contract out or that you can privately pay these clinical supervisors if your workplace is not able to provide an adequate supervisor for whatever reason, right? There's a bajillion reasons why. But an outside clinical supervisor is available to you via the RISE directory. Check that out. So, what I have learned from all of these people is really that our clients have their own journeys. And we, of course, have our own lives and our own journeys. And we are there in this small part of their life to do what it is that we can. And there's the other realization that sometimes we can't really do a whole lot. We wish we could do more, we want to do more, but the way that the systems and structures and organizations are designed, they may not be designed for us to get too involved, for us to help them as much as we would like, right? If they were our family member, oh my gosh, we would go above and beyond. We'd have them in our own car. We would, see them on the weekends. We would call them and check in on them and all of these extra things, right? But as clients, we have to know where the line is. Where does it come to a point where we can say, I have done everything that I possibly can today, and I'm going to be okay with this? And sometimes it takes you having to process this out loud with a colleague. I can't tell you how many times after 5 o'clock, I call my coworker like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to bug you. Do you have a couple minutes to talk?" I just want to process something that happened today. And I think 99% of the time, 100% of the time, they said yes, because that is what we do for each other. And having social workers as colleagues is the most precious gift that you can have in this field. And people do want to help you, and you do need to reach out to them. And a lot of times, if they're able to help you, it makes them feel better too, right? Because they might be in the same situation, feeling defeated, like, I haven't helped anybody today. My life sucks. They might have all these thoughts too, but if you call them and you guys are able to help each other, then that energy feeds off of one another, and it's so powerful, and it builds. It just continues to build in a positive way. So, what I'm really trying to let you know is my big thing that I had to realize is our clients have their own lives, and that is not my life, right? This is my career, this is my job. I have this professional boundary, and this professional boundary allows me to do these certain things to help them on their way, to in an attempt to empower them to make their own decisions, empower them to get to the point that they don't need our services anymore. And if I am instead enabling them and going too far and be like, instead of taking the bus, sure, I'll give you a ride. Who do you think they're going to call the next time that they need a bus ride? They're going to call you, my friend. And you don't want to be their taxi driver. That is not your job, right? Your job is to empower them that if they need to take the bus, that they can feel confident in doing so. Maybe you ride the bus with them if that's allowed, right? But there's so many different boundaries that we need to be sure that we have set up. I know when I was working in hospice, it was hard because I really felt for these families. And you're at their house and they're talking to you, and they're offering you, tea or cookies, whatever, to be polite. And it's so easy to just fall into this situation where the line between social worker and friend is now becoming blurred if you're not really, really careful with it. And if you do not have these clear cut boundaries, like, this is my role and this is what I can help you with, then they're going to keep calling you. They're going to call you all hours of the night, even if that's not your job. And it's going to be so much more difficult to do what I'm telling you right now, because you have to be able to end the day and say, I did everything that I could possibly do. And right now, I'm going to go home and do self-care, spend time with my family, pet my dog, cuddle my cat, whatever it is that you do for you, right? Sometimes I just like to be alone, and that is good enough. And it's so important that you know what it is that you need to do for yourself every single day, right? So being able to take inventory and check in with yourself and say, how am I feeling today? Am I feeling upset? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling proud? Am I feeling accomplished? Am I feeling happy? What is going on with me, and what do I need? What do I need right now? Because I hope you have a toolbox of self-care ready to go, right? Friends, families, pets, nature, exercise, music, art, reading, meditation, spirituality, whatever it is, right? You're going to need different things at different times. And so at the end of the day, just be able to think, okay, did I do everything that I possibly can for this person? Yes, no. If it's a no, be honest with yourself. That's fine, because there's always tomorrow. We can always pick it up tomorrow, and they will be there. And believe me when I tell you this, there are always going to be people who need help. There's always going to be people who need more from you, who want more from you, who just want and want and want, and they will take and take and take as much as you give, right? I don't mean to get spiritual with this, but I thought this was a really great story when I heard this at my church. And I had never heard this story before, and I was like, what? Jesus did this? That's amazing. All social workers need to do this. So when Jesus was here, he was here, he's like walking around helping people, performing miracles, and this is what he's doing, right? Like he is being his own person and spreading the word and doing all these great things for all these people and helping people, right? Like this is his job, like why he's here is to help people, right? And he leaves town. He goes far, far away outside of the village to just pray. And this can be you, just like meditate, just sit, just be, right? He took his friends with him. His friends are kind of, there. Actually, no, this time he didn't take his friends. Normally he does, but he went out to be by himself. And his friends, they eventually find him. They say, Jesus, where in the world have you been? There are people looking for you. There are people needing help. There are people back at the village. Like there's lines of people waiting for your help. And that's what it feels like when you and I go to work sometimes, right? Sometimes there's a literal line outside of your building of people needing help. And Jesus said, let's go the other way. Let's go this way. Because he knew where he was going. He knew his goals. He knew his purpose. He knew his direction, right? There's, and I think that's just so powerful because it shows that there's always going to be people who need your help. And you are not Jesus, nor am I. So if he can set this boundary and be like, look, I've helped all the people that I can here right now. We're going to go over here. And while this is not exactly possible for all of us, it's something to consider, right? Like I have helped everyone that I can today. It is 5 o'clock. It is Friday, whatever it is for you. And I'm going to go over here because there will always, always be more people that need your help. And you need to be able to confidently set that boundary and know like, okay, I've done everything that I can today. And I'll be honest, this comes with a lot of practice. This is not natural. We're not born with this ability to put up this mental boundary with ourselves. It takes a lot of practice. And so you need to continue to reach out to other people and continue to reach out to your supervisor and people who are going to support you, who understand what you're going through, right? So that is my thing. I guess I covered a lot, right? I said there was only one. I kind of like, so there was the boundaries, right? We got to put up mental boundaries for ourselves, and we have to be able to accept when we have done enough and be honest with ourselves about how we're feeling and what do we need in this time that we are off of work. And when it's time for us to be with ourselves, to self-care, to do that deep soul care, right? And when I talk about self-care, I mean, people, not people, companies lately have been touting self-care as like something that you buy at the mall. You get in your Starbucks cup or you buy this fancy spa facial, right? Okay, that is not what I'm talking about when I say self-care. When I say self-care, it's like deep level soul care. If a latte and a facial is your soul care, like that helps you to really relax, cool. But you do not have to spend money for self-care, for soul care, right? It's about what makes you feel good, whole, and complete and at peace with yourself. And this, a lot of times, is not spending money. Because let's be honest, a lot of us don't have a lot of money to be spending right now. So that is good news that our soul care does not cost anything. It's things that are free, things that are innately human to you, right? Laughing, talking to your friends, petting animals, being outside in nature, listening to music, singing at the top of your lungs and dancing your heart out, right? All of these different ways that we are able to feel joy is what I would consider self-care or soul care. So with that, I will let you know that this is going to be the last episode of 2023. And for the rest of December, I am going to go do my soul care, which, to be honest, is going to be a lot of alone time. Probably getting out in nature. I like to journal a lot. I obviously go to church and pray, which has been really important and helpful for me in my social work career. And reading. I like reading books. Of course, listening to podcasts. So if this was helpful for you in any way, or if it helped you to kind of rethink those boundaries, please text this to a friend or text this to a colleague, send it to them, IG it to them, WhatsApp them, whatever it is that you do. Just please make sure that you're sharing this information with somebody else who might need it and might benefit from it. If they don't listen to it and they're like, nah, whatever, at least you know you have done everything that you can do for today. And I hope that that brings you peace, my friend. So, with that, I will say goodbye. If you want more from me and more information about social work and tips and resources on clinical social work, definitely consider joining the email resource list. This is like a newsletter essentially that I send out on a sort of week. Lately, it's been a weekly basis. I've been very good. I've been very proud of myself on sending out these resources on a weekly basis. But a lot of it is things like workshops and tools. I do clinical test prep in there. So there's a lot of different resources that can help you as a clinical social worker, especially if you are new out of your bachelor's or your master's program, or if you're even a student. There's so many students that listen to this podcast. I've even had professors assign podcast episodes as assignments, which I think is amazing. Very forward thinking. I love it. But anyways, with that said, I wish you all the peace and joy that the holiday season has to bring. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not being sarcastic, but for real. If you can do these three things, I think that will go a really, really long way for you. All right, my friend. I will talk to you next year.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and text this episode to a friend. If you want more, there are a few ways we can get to know each other and work together. First, definitely subscribe to the Friday resource email list. The link is in the show notes. And that's where you can learn more about the courses I offer, including Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist and the Pulse Basics for Medical Social Workers. I'll also be sending out occasional tips and resources and other happenings within the social work industry. And for all your clinical supervision needs, be sure to visit risedirectory.com. This is a national directory of clinical supervisors for social workers, and we also provide free resources that you can use within your own clinical supervision. Lastly, if you have more individualized needs, I do offer coaching, individual consultations, and am available for public speaking engagements for social workers and change makers. Lastly, the boring legal stuff, but very important. The information in this podcast is not meant to be a supplement for therapy, professional advice, or clinical supervision. This content is provided as is solely for informational purposes. It is not legal, health, or safety advice. I am not advising you as a therapist. Organizations should engage their own experts to ensure any adopted measures are compliant with applicable laws and standards in their jurisdictions. The opinions expressed by individuals or organizations are their own and do not reflect the views or opinions of Social Workers Rise or Catherine Moore. References to specific products or organizations do not constitute any endorsement or recommendations by Social Workers Rise.